Hello, America, and to our friends around the world, greetings. Welcome back. Today, we're going to cover the element card Foot Withdraw, FW, Foxtrot Whiskey. As you can see, I've got it here for you right up at front. I'm going to put up a few different things, but one of the things I want to draw your attention to right off the bat is at the 9 o'clock position on, so the left side of the card, about midpoint down, underneath where it says foot withdraw, are the abbreviations CL and JP. We're going to incorporate, if I'm not mistaken, the first analysis that it uses object interaction. What is object interaction? All right, the video clip was from the Tim Roth Lie to Me that was on Fox over a decade ago, and that was from their opening credit. I'm going to see if I can locate, when I get back online, additional examples of object interaction to close this out. But right here on the subset of the Behavioral Table of Elements by Chase Hughes for his Ellipsis training, it says in the top row, object interaction. And it probably reads a little too small for you to see what's being displayed. So let me take a moment to zoom in here for myself. All right, so others property, object interaction, shoe removal, carelessness, watch check. Everybody that's old enough from that was born in the early 80s, 70s, and before remembers the infamous George Bush checking his watch during the debate and suspecting that is the sign that he was going to give the election over to Clinton in 92. Jacket button, covering, object barrier, chair arms, groin shield, security check, fist on, fist table, concealment, and the final two, which we're going to highlight as the confirming gestures, jewelry, and chair legs. I want to pop back over here to the jacket button. With Joe Navarro's book, What Every Body is Saying, he talks about the necktie. In fact, I think I'm going to incorporate that image in here. Here's a static image display of the object interaction. As you can read in the text, men adjust their ties to deal with insecurities or discomfort. It also covers the suprasternal notch. All right, so we've covered this. And to further illustrate what this represents, I want to bring back the card, and then we're going to transition to the color chart and go over the map. All right, right off the bat, as we're looking at the card, you can see that this is pretty much a universal gesture, action, the foot withdraw. I've been focusing on object interaction, but I want you to recognize a foot withdraw. That's the pulling back of the foot. It's right prior to a stance, a defensive or a fighting stance. Also, keep in mind, as we can see here on the color key, that it's high stress. And if you recall, looking at the bottom of the chart, and I'm going to have that highlighted later, is that the DRS rating is 3.5. Now keep in mind, we have yellow for high stress, we have gray for deceptive and or stress. And I'm going to emphasize a little bit that facial expression, because the amplifying gesture is going to be one of the 7 micro-expressions that Dr. Ekman documented in his global study of body language. All right, here's the chart. It looks a little busy. I'm trying to highlight different aspects of it. Right off the bat at the top, I have highlighted, if you can read it, is B and D. And I screwed up. My apologies. It meant to be B and A for before an answer and after an answer. And that, in hindsight, I should have raised the element cards up a bit so that the index would have fit underneath it. B and A, as you can see at the 5 o'clock position on the foot withdraw element card, refers to before an answer and after an answer. Moving back up the card to 3 o'clock, AGG is toes up. That's the conflicting behavior. I've got the color key in the lower corner. We've already covered that. Let's skip over to the microphysiological, which is none. Now, I stated that the amplifying gesture is one of the 7 microexpressions, and this one is fear. The other one is orbital tension. There was a movie. Oh shoot! I can't remember the name of it, but Eliza Dushku was in it. She was the love interest of the guy. Guy goes to jail, and he's taught by this other guy. You got to give him the crazy eyes. So keep that in mind. It's the eyes. The eyes are one of the giveaways because the eyes are going to demonstrate whether the fear is genuine, as we've discussed in the fear element card early, in another video. But the orbital tension is going to give you the idea as to what is going on. Is this a legit thing? If their eyes are relaxed, they're not taking it seriously. They're just having fun. But if they are tense, if they show muscle strain on some level for the muscles that are impacted for the action units there, then you know to take it seriously. Then at the top, you have chair legs and jewelry. I circled all 3 of the DRS. So we're going back to the 6 o'clock position on all 3 cards, the deception rating scale number. 3.5 with foot withdrawal, 3.5 on jewelry. So now we're at a 7. And remember, this is a 0 to 4 scale. Chair legs. That's another 4. Now we're at 11. Now I did tie in, the crazy eyes for fighting. Go back to what was discussed with Joe Navarro's book, the fear, or rather the for the freeze, flight, fight, 3 F's in chapter 2. This ties in. If you're in a situation where you cannot escape, you've only got 2 choices, and that is to freeze and to fight. So think of this as like the self-soothing gestures. Playing with an object is a means of expelling that anxious energy, that desire to flee. That energy's got to go somewhere. So it's going to be focused on playing with the jewelry on the chest. As you can see at the 2 o'clock position on the card, it is a female-dominated action because women typically wear jewelry rather. I don't know where knives came from, but regardless. Uh, if you're in Britain, apparently that's illegal. You can't have knives anymore. Uh, oh, wait, no, that was katanas and ninja swords. All right, and then drifting over here further to the left, you can see that the prevalence is universal with men and women, boys and girls for chair legs. And that is the wrapping of your legs around the chair leg, to calm your feet. Remember, as was described, your feet are the furthest region from your brain, and as a result, they are the most observable as to what is going on behind the scenes of one's thinking. They're going to point the direction of desire. They're going to expel the most amount of energy. They're the least controlled portion of the body because it takes the body longer to send the signal there. And that's where you're going to get the most stable, you're going to get your stable footing, but you're not going to get a stable footing if you are panicked. All right, so this is foot withdrawal. I'm going to see if I can locate some examples of this. If I don't, bear with me. Right now, my internet's playing games with me, and I want to get this information presented to you. And with the incorporation at the beginning with playing with the ring, it at least gives you an idea of what object interaction is. I think all of us have seen or done, especially middle school test time for a test we weren't prepared for, wrapping our ankle around the chair leg because of the anxiety of, oh wow, I better do well on this test. As well as we've seen plenty of movies and television shows where the woman will play with her necklace, sometimes in a coy, flirting gesture, other times, as a means of alleviating stress. And that's what it really comes down to is stress isn't always bad. It's just energy that the body's trying to dissipate. All right, before I close this out, here is a visual static of the foot withdrawal. When feet shift from flat-footed to the starter position, this is an intention cue that the person wants to go. This is from chapter 3 of Joe Navarro's What Every Body is Saying. And this illustrates the foot withdrawal that we've been discussing. There's a reason somebody withdraws their foot. It's either as a defensive stance, waiting for combat, or it is their intention to flee. Remember, there is the freeze. So if you're withdrawing your foot, you've escalated from freeze to either flight or fight. Be aware of this indication. Remember, going back to chapter 2, the limbic system of that same book talks about this. It was a very long chapter, or it seemed like it was a very long chapter, and it's worth going back over and either reading it yourself or, as I've provided for you, the reading for you. These are all factors. This is the reason that the DRS number is rating is so high. What did we calculate? 11 if the amplifying gestures are in play, or excuse me, the confirming gestures are in play, because you've got the jewelry, you've got chair legs. In fact, let me see if I can, because I use the free version, I'm limited to 10 frames. Let me see if I can put that in here. All right, this is also from chapter 3 of the same book by Joe Navarro. Here is a visual static display of interlocking your feet, your legs with the chair legs. And what does this do? This constrains your anxious, nervous energy, that wanting to flee. These are all valuable indicators. This is the value of the ellipsis behavioral table of elements, by being able to recognize these individual elements, because it's not enough to just observe one's body language. You have to be able to baseline your individual, and as they deviate from that baseline, you have to be able to assign a value. There's people that grow up that learn to recognize this, but they don't have the quantifiable skills to know what the DRSs are. That is the scientific approach to it, to assign a value that these individuals have learned to ascertain for survival. That is what I'm attempting to get across in these videos, is to illustrate these tools and say, look, here it is. Here's the science right there. Chase Hughes says you need a deception rating scale, and it's 0 through 4. Joe Navarro comes in and states, hey, here's your limbic system. It is the in-between brain in terms of emotional responses to a stress situation. And as I've stated earlier, stress is both good and bad. You're going to have stressors of joy, which most people don't associate with being stressed because it's relieving, but it's an altered state. All right. So that is the reason I've been reading this book for you guys to digest. This is the reason I've been dissecting the behavioral table of elements and attempting to incorporate either the static images, as I focused on today, or the video displays, whether it's action units or the METT, whatever it happens to be. Remember, when you're doing your observations, you have to incorporate a baseline. The best way to incorporate a baseline is to interact in a non-threatening, non-confrontational manner. Then, as you proceed from there, you can begin dropping in your questions or your statements to gauge reactions. Think of it as the movies. When somebody takes a polygraph, they do what color shirt am I wearing? Did you brush your teeth this morning? Those baseline questions. They're stupid, but they establish a baseline. And that is what you have to do before you go in and state what happened to the night drop deposit. There was a $5,000 cash and a bunch of checks, and the bank says that they're not there. And when you ask that question, you need to have established already what has happened. And when we go into the forensic statement analysis, then you're going to learn how they respond in terms of, I drove the car to the bank, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, the car took off with everything in it. It's by recognizing the pronoun game, again, of first they're taking ownership of operating the vehicle, and then they're assigning individuality to the vehicle to drive itself away. Those are the tricks that you're going to be able to incorporate in all of this to understand what's going on around you. Good luck, stay safe, and I look forward to you returning on the next video.